Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another week with Barry and me. As Barry and I were just talking, we almost missed it. We are recording in May, but this will be airing in June. But May is Mental Health Month, and we thought we cannot let it go without addressing how important our mental health is, not obviously just for ourselves, but how we show up in our relationships or in how we relate to other people when we are healthy and we've taken care of ourselves. So I thought we'd talk about some of the ways in which we can. I just think the world is a little crazy right now for a lot of people, and I'm seeing a lot of people going through a lot of stress, and it's unbelievable, and it's worldwide. It's not just America; it's worldwide. It's not just Malibu, who are still suffering from our fallout from the fires, but I have family in Europe, and the same thing. Everybody is anxious, whether it's wars, the economy, climate change. All of these factors can impact our mental health. So today we thought we'd talk about ways in which we can, we certainly know the ways in which it can negatively affect our health, but ways in which we can take care of ourselves and really be operating at our best and at our highest. So Barry, what do you do for your mental health?
Well, something I learned years ago, and it wasn't like a special technique, I just figured something out, is that it's very tempting and very easy to get swayed by outside things, especially with social media and everything with our phones in our faces nowadays. It's almost too easy to get swayed by outside things. And I learned years ago, even though I forget sometimes, just to be transparent, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, is to imagine some ways that I'm like a cork floating on the ocean, or like a beach ball floating in the ocean, where basically the ocean can be moving, but the ball stays pretty stable.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of visual thing for me is that remember to just like breathe and stay present, because frankly, the biggest challenge most people have, and I believe I do too sometimes, when I get caught up in something outside myself, is I'm not present anymore. And so the mechanics, and I know we're jumping ahead talking about solutions rather than causes, but the solution for me has always been, when I remember to do it, is just to breathe and stay present, because when I do that, it's the simplest thing, but apparently it goes, oh yeah, okay, that isn't me. There's something else. Because the challenge we have with mental health is we get caught up in other stories that aren't who we are. And that becomes a downward spiral, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah, and and again, as we said, we've just listed the things that can cause our mental health to suffer. So really, this show is about focusing on what we can do to combat that, to help keep ourselves afloat, using Barry's metaphor, and steady on top of the rough oceans. And yes, for me, I think, especially when we're talking about world events that are happening around us, sometimes part of our anxiety or depression from those things are feeling helpless.
Exactly.
So I really encourage people that feel passionately about the environment or politics or whatever, get involved.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
powerlessness that often we feel that brings us down. We just feel that the monster's just too big to even like attempt to fight. Well, I mean, there's lots of other things. There's, regular self-care, getting sleep, good nutrition, doing things that uplift you. We all know those things. But I think taking action is one of the most beneficial things. And it can be small. It can just be in your community. You don't have to go and,
Right.
run for Congress or anything like that. Even though I think that's an excellent idea, if you are passionate about politics and what's happening in our country, start at a local level, get involved, do things. Or another one I think is incredible, certainly helps me, is to help other people, is to get
Absolutely.
involved,
Yeah.
to do some volunteer work, and especially if it's in an area that you feel passionate about and is the one area I mean, some of us, like the whole everything gets to us, and some people it's just one area, like you know, activism in world events, things like that. You can definitely get involved. You don't have to get involved in everything, but the
Right.
one that's key to you, the one that bothers you the most, and you find drags you down, that's the one to become involved in.
But yeah, something you said though about all those things we know how to do. One of the challenges when we do get caught up in these things that pull our focus, or we get depressed, or we get run down by things, is we sort of somehow forget those simple things we can do.
Yeah.
And so part of it is just remembering, oh yeah, I can go for a walk, I can breathe, and just start with nuts and bolts. Like, okay, I can breathe, I can tell somebody I love them, I can look in the mirror and tell myself I love myself. I can do anything like that. Doesn't cost anything, doesn't require other people necessarily, but you can actually do simple steps to get back to your equilibrium, your own autonomy. And yes, I mean, I volunteer every weekend with a feeding project. It isn't necessarily the thing I'm passionate about, the feeding, but I'm passionate about service. And
Mm.
that's probably one of those things. And as you said, I got totally underscore that. Being able to do something beyond ourselves is one of the biggest ways we get back to being in balance again, in being in homeostasis, so to speak. Because the challenge for most people when they get depressed and get frustrated is because they don't know, they sort of don't know where they are in terms of relationship to the world. They get so frustrated by it, or so out of control, that they don't understand their own power, their own authority. So when you're being of service, you discover you have a power beyond yourself to make a difference and impact other people. So I think what you said is so perfect. Doing something small, big, whatever it is in your local community is such a great way to not only regain mental balance, but to make an impact on someone else's life. So you actually reach beyond your own, body to actually make an impact. So yeah, service is a great one of those tools.
Well, yeah, and exactly, and I think most people that are concerned about the state of the world, whether it's war, whether it's um, climate change, whatever those things are, the reason they're concerned is not because, oh, how does it impact me necessarily? It's how it's impacting the whole world.
Right.
The war in Europe right now is not directly impacting us, but it's our compassion and our care for the people that are suffering that is causing our suffering. So
Hmm.
yes, you're right. It's what feeds us is, I know it sounds trite, but it isn't. It's being the best version of ourselves we can be in the sense of caring for others. And if we can't go over to to Europe right now and serve and do whatever we can do, just by serving the people that need us in our community, and it can be,
Yeah.
like you said, it can be about being food deficient or whatever it is, we can do something and it feeds us. We feel better about making the world a better place, even when there seems to be people in the world that don't care about that. And there is horrific things going on. Um, it is caring for one another. And as you said, I mean, ultimately, it's when we care for ourselves first. And as a mother, I used to think it was the most ridiculous thing when they said, put your own oxygen mask on first, before you put it on your child when you're on an airplane. It's like,
Yeah.
crazy. I'm a mother. I'm going to put it on my child first. But then you realize that if you're struggling to put it on your child and you can't breathe, you're not going to be of any good to anybody. So
Right.
much as it might go against the grain to take care of yourself first, it really is important. And when you are letting world events take you down to the point where you're not functioning at your highest, you are impacting your relationships and those around you. You're adding to the pain and suffering and negativity in the world, as opposed to bringing more light into the situation.
Yeah. That's
So
that's the key. One of the
yeah,
things you were talking about, I realized is, and this sounds trite, and also because what we do is almost like we're selling ourselves. Is if you're in a place where you're not sure how to move forward, or you're feeling in a spiral, you're not able to function, reach out for help.
yeah,
One of the biggest things we think sometimes is that we have to figure our way out of it. We're not able to. We can't. It's almost like a level of shame that we can't handle ourselves. So we don't want to risk being seen as vulnerable or weak by somebody else. But the reality is, you reach out for support from a friend or from a coach or from a therapist or from something, you might discover that someone is out there saying, yes, I will help you, because you'll feel better because of it. And a lot of times what we do, and I know it's definitely the spiral we get into, so we think like we have to handle ourselves and we keep ourselves private, because we have some rule inside of ourselves that says we can't show the world anything except perfection. So we're not able to expose our vulnerability to the world safely, because we don't trust it's safe to do so. And so one of the things we do is get help that way. But just speak to one of the other things about the global stuff is, now I've got to be careful because I can get very spiritual on this one, is that a lot of times what I'm watching, a part of me goes, and there's this old story about the farmer who basically, has a young son, and they sort of say about how his son's so great, and then his son they get a horse, and the horse breaks his leg. This whole story about, is it going to be great or so bad? We shall, and he always goes, we shall see, sort of thing, or let's see what happens. There's something about what's happening in the world where I'm noticing that, yes, some things are not going the way I feel they should go. But it's kind of like, wait a minute, it will change. There's some things that are going on now. It feels like they're going to actually end up like self-destructing themselves. So those things will actually go away. There are things happening, thankfully, because I do also watch positive things on YouTube. There are solutions being created and healing that's happening that's going to override all this negative declination that's been painted all over the news. Because the other problem as well, by the way, just to put back to the problem side, is that a lot of people are very attached to media and news and reports of things that are not good news. So that's one of the challenges. If you're really feeling like you want to get your mental health back, turn that stuff off for a while. Take a week off and see what happens. Because that alone can think. I know I'll give you like 15 things to think about there.
No, exactly. And that was one of the things that we were going to touch on is that exposure to media. And not just exposure to media, it's exposure to negative people that can be in your orbit. That, I mean, there's a few things I would say. Going back first to where we're saying getting help.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's something wrong with you, but you have feelings that need to be expressed. And sometimes going to a therapist or a coach or whatever, it's not that they have to fix you because there's something wrong with you, but sometimes you just need a safe place to be heard. Safe place that's not going to sort of blow your family away or your friends, but where you can really let your feelings out. And there's ways to do that. There's ways you either can go and, as I say, talk to a counselor or a coach or a therapist, get your feelings out. Another way, if you don't want to do that, is to write your rage, literally, write your upset, write your feelings, and just write and write and write and write and write. You don't have to do anything with that writing. You might want to, if it gets incredibly negative, you might want to rip it up and burn it, or release it back into the universe, or whatever you do. But it's really important to channel that energy in a positive way. I mean, we've mentioned helping others. That's one way. But I also feel that, Debbie Ford used to have this saying that was like, you can't put ice cream on top of poop because eventually the poop is just going to come through. And
yeah, okay.
But it's true. So I'm not saying mask your feelings, but shove them down at all. I think it's important to get that feeling up and out, but in a constructive, positive way, that it doesn't blow other people out of the water, blow your loved ones out of the water. It can be channeled in a certain way where, as I said, you've been seen, you've been heard. Even if you're the only one that's witnessing the depth of your feelings and frustration and whatever it is, you are getting to witness it and you're getting to release it. The other thing was exactly what you mentioned about limiting, and I don't believe in putting your head in the sand and ignoring all world events, but I love what you just referenced, the Chinese farmer story. It is true. Sometimes something can look really bad, but there's good coming out of it, or something can look really good and something bad comes out of it. I mean, we never know. It's up and down. It's up and down. Anything we know is change is inevitable, and that is beyond control. But the other thing I was going to say, the other, it's typical me, it's come in and gone out again, but it will come back if I don't chase it. That always happens.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about the sort of the limiting the media. I know what it was. It was another thing I think I read somewhere years and years ago, and that was our nervous systems. I mean, when you think about it, we as human beings evolved out of small little groups, little villages. And we were exposed to what happened within that village. And maybe once a year somebody died, or once a year the river flooded a little bit, or once a year something happened. But very, very, when you think about it, very little in that isolated little village is really that threatening, because it doesn't happen that often. We can cope with it. But what social media has brought us, or the news and everything like that, is we are exposed 24/7 to world events that we weren't designed to handle. Our nervous system can't handle it. So we are bombarded with this information, and it's like being on the receiving end of a bull machine. It's coming at us, and we don't have a chance to catch our breath, to recover, because we're on to the next disaster, the next horrific thing that has happened. So it is to be selective with how much you expose yourself to. Be aware. I mean, I know people that never read a newspaper, never watch the news, and it's certainly not the way I would do my life. I like to be informed, but I'm also very aware when I've overdone it. And case in point was 9/11. Oh my God, it was like I was glued to the TV. I felt like, I think there was anthrax at the time, and terrorism, and I was terrified because I was consuming too much news at the time, and I could feel it in my body. I could feel the anxiety just overwhelming me, and I consciously just turned it all off, and I could watch myself just settle. And at some point, I turned it back on again to get the little information I needed, but not the bombardment that I was putting myself through during that time.
And the thing is that back then, it's 20 years ago, it was the news that really shocked us. And I remember vividly my experience then. I think people to say everyone knew where they were on September 11th. But the thing is, media nowadays has shifted so dramatically in such a isolationist club. Like you're on one side or the other. There's no inclusivity. There's no crossing the line. You have to be on one side or the other, and nobody wins. And that game that people are playing is where we get trapped into if we don't realize we don't have to play either one of them.
Mhm.
That we can stay in the middle, we can stay centered, we can be the mediator even, or we don't take one side or the other. The thing that is key is that remember we have the authority to do what we want. Because when we start following the herd because we don't think any differently, we become part of the masses on one side or the other. We don't have autonomy anymore. And so we forget that we have the power, and we forget that we can be centered, we can be relaxed, we can be calm. We get caught up in the mass hysteria that happens. And then we don't realize, because it's so easy to get caught in mass hysteria. It's almost like this like common thread that everyone gets caught up in. But when you recognize you can step free of that and stand on your own 2 feet and be centered, which again we talked about at the beginning, you can be independent of all the turmoil and all the upset and all the frustration. And when you can do that, it's easier to just remember that it's not, first, it's not about you in the sense that whatever happening is happening out there. But secondly, all your mental support is about you. Meaning you can really put some energy into taking care of yourself and create a better place to be. Part of that, I just talking about yesterday, was something about having healthy boundaries, is having the understanding that you don't have to be enmeshed with somebody else's stuff. It's so tempting, but you don't have to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a few things that you were saying there that I wanted to comment on. On it is where you get your information from. As you said, I mean, and I think it's worldwide. I don't think it's just America that there are certain news channels that have gone, one way or the other. I try and get my news source from various places, not from the extreme places on either side. Quite honestly, I tend to go for where the center is. I like to watch my European news. I like to get that sort of perspective on it too. And because I think if you just stay locked into one news source, I mean, we're veering off a little bit here, but that can become extreme. That's when you go on either side is what that's where you're channeled into the extreme, and that's where the level of frustration and helplessness can really start feeling like it's real, and that there's nothing I can do, and the world is doomed either way, or I have to behave in a radical way to correct it. No, come back to center on everything. Come back to center in in reflecting on your belief systems either. Pull back, have a big picture. And
Right.
the other one is to, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, about, you know, whether we're living in the present moment, in the past, or the present moment, or the future. Again,
Hmm.
in the present moment, you know, we can all catastrophize and go off into what's going to happen, and you know, the future hasn't arrived yet. It comes, obviously it's coming every second, it's coming, but to just, as to live in the present moment and experience it as it's happening, and to do what you can do in, again, in the present moment. There's nothing wrong with having ideals or a vision for where you'd like to see the country go or the world go. Like I said, I mean, you know, when we're conscious and aware of climate change, how we you know, our consumerism, how we just dispose of our, you know, trash and things like that. Be conscious, but conscious in the moment. That you can do a lot by just um, this. I mean, I've just spent a few days with Hootie's daughter, who is, you know, I always say she's not, and her family, they're not what's the word I'm looking for, bougie hippies. They're like real hippies. I mean, the hairy armpit hippies. But lovely, incredible family, beautiful way they're raising their children. But to be so aware of the planet and every, you know, our footprint and what we do, and it's just beautiful to watch. But I see that as starting small. I mean, big actually, but within her own family, their own family, their family unit, how they're raising their children with consciousness and not to be consumers and discard, and everything they probably have is not even second hand, third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand, whatever it is. It's repurposed, and homegrown vegetables and chickens and building fairy houses out of scraps of piece of wood, and it was just so beautiful. And we realized that there's so much we can do, as I say, on that day-to-day basis, that is within our control and our power.
Absolutely. That's interesting. The thing I've been aware of recently, talking to certain people, because the idea about who these kids, family, that conversation, because I'm aware of certain friends of mine who are so committed to this sort of walking lightly on the earth, so to speak, the way they impact the world and what they do with stuff. And I realized it is a spectrum. You know, I was with a friend of mine yesterday. You know, I don't go to restaurants much because I eat at home because I like making my own food, and also I can control what goes into it. I don't necessarily eat the perfect, like, healthiest, greenest only food, but I do my best to sort of read the ingredients and stuff like that. But the thing is, it's tempting, and I don't do this, but it's tempting to get in places like, I should do better, I should change this, I should stop eating this and start eating that, and all these rules and stuff, because this whole movement into eating more consciously or being more kind to the planet is it's a long road to walk down, and there are many choices to make along that road. And frankly, just doing one or two pieces of that journey is great. But to say I've got to commit to everything, and if I fall down one of them, I'm in trouble, which is what some people do, is going to be beating ourselves up, and that doesn't work for anybody.
Yes,
So
yes.
you do what you can.
Bringing it back to mental health. Beating ourselves up does not do anything for our mental health.
Yeah, point.
Yeah, so we've covered, you know, sort of limiting our the negative input, whether it's through media or friends who, or family that just want to just complain and not do anything positive to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Uh, and as I said, everybody needs to be heard, but at some point, you've got to step back and go, how is this impacting my relationships? Am I driving people away because I'm just constantly regurgitating this negativity, or am I
Mhm.
channeling it in a positive direction?
Right.
I'm thinking back to when I was younger. Oh my God, I sleep. I used to think, what a wasted time. We spent a third of our lives asleep. I mean, I was just burning the candle at both ends when I was younger. It was like, oh, 4 hours, I can do that. And now I love my sleep. It's precious to me. I wish I got more of it. I've got two great big fat cats that love to just snap during the night, um, and a dog that snores next to me, and a husband that snores too. But so where I can get my sleep is very precious to me. So the earplugs, the eye masks, and a nap in the afternoon if I have a chance, if I need
Mhm.
it to catch up. But little things like that. I used to think that was just such a, as I said, a waste of time, a luxury that I couldn't afford. And but I can't remember what it is. There's a saying in AA. I remember a friend of mine used to go, and she said it's something about when you're hungry, angry, or something. It's like those are the times when you will slip into your addiction. So
Right.
to take care of yourselves, like you said, that that eating health is healthy, and even if it's one or two changes, doesn't matter. Just we say shop on the outside of the supermarket, fresh fruits, vegetables. There's nothing wrong with grains if it doesn't upset your stomach. This whole sort of, oh, I can't have grains. Some people are fine on grains, some people are not. Pay attention to your body, listen to your body, and give it what it needs. And the same thing with sleep. Walking in nature, my God, that is the thing that lifts my spirits more than anything. I mean, when
Yeah.
you're walking in nature, it's very, very hard to be depressed, for me anyway, because I just start focusing on the beauty of it. I'm looking out my window right now at these gorgeous trumpet vines, and it's just like takes your breath away, and it just stops that negative chatter, and just the inhaling that beauty just can just ground you, just
Yeah.
settle your nervous system.
Yeah. I noticed like this morning I'm driving, because I go hiking every morning, and that is always one of my anchors that keeps me really grounded in the morning. And I love doing it, 'cause even though it isn't necessarily a walk in nature to admire. I mean, it's sometimes, because I'm walking up fire roads and walking past other people, so it's not totally isolationist and peaceful, but it still keeps me grounded. And I love being able to stay out there before I get into the day's duties and everything else, before I open up my screens. But the thing was, coming home today, come back to, I'm only like 3 miles away, but when driving back, is in our neighborhood, the jacaranda trees are out blooming.
Mhm.
So these
Yeah.
purple blooms are everywhere.
I
And
got
that,
two in my
you know,
front yard.
and it lasts like a week, 2 weeks at most, sort of, and then they're all over the country, which sucks. But for the moment they're up trees and it's all like that, there's just beautiful, just lavender glow to the whole neighborhood. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I know, it's stunning. I deliberately when I moved to this place, I planted jacaranda trees because that's the first thing. I flew into LA in 1981. It was June, and the jacarandas were in bloom, and I was like, "Oh my God, have I arrived in heaven?" Little did I know, as you said, the blooms only last like 2 weeks, but the fronds and the branches are gorgeous. There's just, it's a beautiful plant. But jasmines are out blooming. I've got jasmines all over the place. I'm intoxicated with jasmine um, scent. But the other one I also wanted to really mention very quickly, a way to get your serotonin levels up, and is exercise. I mean, you just mentioned it, your daily walk. I mean, even if it's just a walk, it's so good for your health. But beyond seeing nature and the beauty of nature, but the actual physical activity of walking, moving, getting your body going. Again, it's nature's antidepressant. It's your body's natural form of antidepressant um, is to build those. I'm forgetting serotonin and what's the other, dopamine, and all those other positive feeling um, endorphins and things like that can really help you. And again, just to finish off what we were saying, if you need help, if your mental health is in crisis, there is nothing wrong with getting um, either talk therapy, coaching, whatever. But also sometimes things that you've spiraled to the point where a little medication for a short period of time can lift you out of that and give you the platform to then go ahead and wean off the medication and get your mental health back. There's nothing wrong with it. And some people literally do have a chemical imbalance and they need that balance of medication. So we've talked a lot about the natural way to sort of elevate our moods and keep our mental health intact. But I am not dismissing by any means getting additional pharmaceutical help if needed.
And on the other extreme, just to add that
Yes.
one hit me, was if you feel like you're everything down the dumps and you want to lift yourself up, just do a search on YouTube for comedy shows. There is so much lifting humor that can get you up and out of your. I mean, I use it all the time when I feel like I need to catch something. There are just so many great comedians out there, and even old stuff. Because the thing about YouTube, it's not just what happened in the last 2 weeks. It's like 20, 30 years of comedies up there.
Yeah.
So you can find something that will just tickle you enough to make you feel better.
I
So
love
some
that.
of the favorites.
Yeah, I love that. That's one I hadn't thought about. That's really great. I love that, Barry. Well, thank you, everybody. That was another wonderful chat. Thank you, Barry. And we will see you all next week. Take care.
Sweet. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.